Okay, in this video, we're going to have a look at the OR function. So the OR function basically is a logical check. Let's actually demonstrate it. Let's say I wanted to see if this grade here was either A or B, right? So if I said equals and I typed in OR, right, and it checks whether any of the arguments are true, and it will return true or false. And it will only return false if everything in here is false. Let's look at an example. So the first check we want to say is that equal to A, right? Or is that equal to B, right? And I close it off and it says true, because one of the two, any one, you can have multiple ones, right? You could have even 10 different, but I've only got two. Each of these checks, logical checks, is separated by an argument. So just clicking on that function, the logical one, logical two, and of course I could have 3, 4, and 5, but in this case I've just got two. But the moment any of these things are true, it will revert to true. If I copy this down, you can see in this case it's not A, so it's not D4 is not equal to A, right? And D4 is not equal to B either. So if they both, none of them are actually true, this thing will return false. Now, the way you basically use this particular function is not on its own. You don't really typically use it like this, where you just put in equals or. You use it normally as part of something else. So for example, let's say I wanted to have a promote or repeat, right? So I said, okay, if somebody basically has an A or a B, we're going to give them a promotion. And if they have a C, they need to repeat. So the way it would basically, how we would use that is normally, as we could use an if statement to, an if statement. We would normally have to use an ifs to say, okay, is that equal to A, and then we would say, okay, then we must say promote. If that is equal to B, that would be the second check, also equal to promote. And then if that is equal to a C, right, we would then say repeat. Right, so just closing that off and enter, and you can see now if I copy and paste that works. But it's quite a long formula. Maybe if you had, let's think if you had A, B, C, D, and E were all promotes, that would obviously be a it is one way of doing it, but typically that's where you would use a OR formula. So let's look at how we would do that. I'm going to do it again here, but this time I'm going to use the OR formula. So in terms of the OR formula, we're going to say just use a normal if. We don't need to use an if, so we can just say normal ifs. And our logical test is the OR logical test, which means that if this is equal to A, comma, or if this is equal to, if it's equal to B, right? So if either of these two conditions, right? So the logical test is if either of these conditions are true, right? Then we want to say promote. Otherwise, if it's not true, that means if both of these are false, we then want to say repeat, right? And I put in the quotation marks and I close it off and enter. So now if I copy it, you see I'm getting exactly the same result, right? The thing is, if you just look at it from a perspective, this formula here is shorter. It's also easier to read, especially if you had a lot of, like if you had A, B, C, D, and E were all promote, then each time you'd have to repeat this promote using an if statement. Whereas using a single if statement, you just have to say if or, and if any of these conditions are true, which could have been D4 equals to A, D4 equals to B, D4 equals to C, D, whatever. If we had multiple ones and we wanted them all to be promote, then if any of these are true, put in promote, otherwise put in repeat. Okay, so that's just showing the OR formula. And in the following video, we'll look at the AND formula, which is exactly the same principle, but with the AND formula, all of the things would have to be true in order for the function to be evaluated to be true.